graders. How's it going? This is Mr. Campbell. Today we're going to be talking about math. Now, unlike before where we had 7th and 8th graders combined together, I have taken this excellent opportunity to break apart your classes into individualized classes for each different grade. So, 7th graders, go ahead and open up your notebooks to a clean sheet of notebook paper. As always, name and today's date. The objective today is I can define percents and convert between fractions, decimals, and percents. Now, looking at this, we all know about fractions. Fractions are easy. 6 over 10, 7 over 100, and 8 over 1,000. Those are pretty easy and self-explanatory. But let's say we wanted to convert these into percents. How would we go about doing that? Well, there's actually a few ways that we can go about doing this. The first step we're going to look at is we're going to look at converting fractions into decimals. Now, in looking at that, we are going to look at the decimal place values. Now, there are 3 place values that I want you to pay especially important to, and that is the tenths place, the hundredths place, and the thousandths place. The tenths place always goes first to the right of the decimal point. Next comes the hundredths, and next comes the thousandths. So when you have a fraction like 6 over 10, you want to pay attention to the denominator. Now, for 6 over 10, if I were to convert that into a decimal, I would take it, and I would take my place value here of 10, and I would take 6 and put it into the tenths place. So my answer from 6 tenths would be 0.6 for my decimal. If I had 7 over 100, again, looking at our place value, 7 over 100 as a decimal would be 0.07. Now, I already know the question that's probably popping into everyone's head. Mr. Campbell, why didn't you just put 0.7? It's a very good question. Because the 7 is up top here, my hundredths place, I have to keep in line where this number is going to fall. So because it is a single digit number, I have to put a 0 before the 7. Now what happens if I have 8 over 1,000? Well, the third place value here, tenths, hundredths, and thousandths, is thousandths. So my answer would be 0.008 for my decimal. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to give me an email. Let's say I had 2/5 and I wanted to convert this into a decimal. Well, there's one problem with this fraction, and that is that the 5 is not a 10, it's not a 100, it's not 1,000. However, though, I could convert my 5 into a 10, 100, or 1,000 in order to make a decimal happen. The closest number from 5 would be 10. Reason why? Any question? Anyone? Anyone? Can't fool you, can I? Yes. 5 times 2 would give me 10. And just like we talked about before, with fractions, anything we do in our denominator, we're going to do to our numerator. So, 2 times 2 gives me 4, right? So I took 2/5 and I converted it into 4/10. 4/10, we can now convert that into a decimal by making it 0.4. Why is the 4 there? Because it's in the tenths place. Now, with a decimal, let's go ahead and convert decimals now into percents. So using that 0.4 that we just looked at, there are a couple of ways we can look at decimals to percents. The first way we can do this is just on your calculators, take the decimal and multiply it by 100. In doing that, 4.4 times 100 would give me 40. And adding a percent sign, we would get 40%. The other way we could look at this is we could just take the decimal point and move it to the right twice when converting. So we go 1, 2. And we put a 0 there. So again, it would be 40%. So now, let's look at the whole process all together, shall we? Let's say I have, okay. Let's say I have, 1/25. And let's say I want to take 1/25 and make it into a percentage. We want to go straight from fraction to percent. Well, the first thing I have to do is I have to take my fraction and I have to make it into a decimal. So, in doing so, 25 is my denominator. However, I can't make this fraction to a decimal right off the bat. So I have to convert it into a base number of either 10, 100, or 1,000. Well, 10 is too small because 25 is way too big. But 100 I could definitely do. 25 times 4 would give me 100. And whenever I do my denominator, I do to my numerator. So 1 times 4 would give me 4. So now, going from 1/25 is the same as 4 over 100. 4 over 100 I can convert into a decimal by 0.04. So now that I made my decimal, let's make it into a percent. In converting it into a percent, I can either do one of two things. Number one, I could multiply it by 100. Or number two, I could move my decimal to the right twice. So, I'm going to move to the right twice. 1, 2. And in converting that, my percentage would be 4%. So 1/25 is the same as 4%. We're going to be using this more with our next lesson and our following lesson, talking about the percentage or the part in the whole of a larger value. But for the get-go of today, this is the basis of our lesson today. All right? Excellent. Your problem set will be posted in a separate document on Google Classroom with about 8 questions for you to solve and figure out. But for right now, let's go ahead and move into our exit slip today. 5% as a decimal and fraction. I'll give a minute to pause the video here so you can solve it on your own. All right, 7th graders, let's go ahead and do this, shall we? 5%. Now, this time, however, I tricked you. Instead of going fraction to percentage, we're going the opposite this time. So I really wanted to test your calculating skills there. But let's go ahead and work in reverse from where we were before. So, we have a percentage. Let's go ahead and work and make that into a decimal. How do you think we make that into a decimal? You are correct. Instead of multiplying by 100 in order to make a percentage, we're going to divide by 100. or we can move our decimal place to the left twice. So if we divide, because I'll use division this time, by 100, we would get the decimal 0.05. Or if we were to move the decimal place over twice, we'd get the same answer. So now we have 0.05 as a decimal. Now looking here, where is the 5 in this decimal? Correct. It is in the hundreds place. So we would have 5 over 100. Now, if we were in school normally, I would allow this to be the answer, but because this is more digital, we're going to do one step further. Because I know that you know we can simplify 5 over 100. 5 over 100, what can I divide both 5 and 100 by? 5, you are correct. 5 divided by 5 would give me 1, and 100 divided by 5 would give me 20. And as I've said before, quick money count there. Let's see how many 20s are in 100. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. It is correct. So my simplified fraction, or my answer, would be 1 over 20 and 0.05. Any questions? Excellent. All right. Join me in my next lesson. So as we've talked about before, I can define percents and convert them between fractions, decimals, and percents. Our next lesson is going to entail taking this to the next level in finding part and whole in percent problems. Join me next time.